Polaris is
Where'd it go?
one of the most famous stars in the sky.
Where'd it go?
I took my light down while I read. I took my arrow down because we're going to talk about Polaris for a minute. Do you see where Polaris is? It's the tail of the Little Dipper. Polaris is the North Star. It's one of the most famous stars in the sky, but it's not the brightest star in the sky. It's famous because it doesn't move. You see how the stars are moving? But Polaris stays up there in the same spot. The Paiute Indians called the star Noga, and they told a story of Noga the mountain sheep. In Noga's land, there was a great mountain which was almost impossible to climb. Noga was a proud sheep and felt that he could climb any mountain. Around and around the great mountain Noga climbed until he reached the top. So intent on his climbing, Noga failed to notice that with each step the mountain ledge was crumbling behind him. When Noga reached the top, there was no way to get back down. So to this day, Noga is the only star that doesn't move. He's stuck up there at the top of the mountain. The other sheep or stars in the skies did not learn from Noga, and they wander around and around the mountain looking for a way up. So throughout time, the Indians and the Greeks and the Romans, they all told stories about the stars in the sky. So that's one of the stories about Polaris, or the North Star, and why it stays in one spot. We talked about Ursa Major, or Great Bear, once, which is part of the Big Dipper, or the Big Dipper is part of the Great Bear. There's also the Little Dipper. What do you think another name for the Little Dipper would be?
Little Bear.
Little Bear, yep. Or Ursa Minor. Okay, and there's a story about the two bears. According to legend, the all-powerful god Zeus fell in love with Callisto, a beautiful huntress. Zeus's wife Hera was so jealous she changed Callisto into a bear. One day Callisto, still as a bear, heard her son Arca's voice and ran to greet him. Arca was frightened and raised his bow and arrow. At the last second, Zeus saved Callisto by changing Arcas into a little bear. Zeus swung them both high into the air, and Callisto and her son are always united as Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, Big and Little Bear. Hera, mad that Zeus still cared for Callisto, sent the bears to the very cold North Pole constellations that never set. So the Great Bear and Ursa Major and Little Bear, Ursa Minor, they're up in our northern sky and they don't set. Some of our constellations through the season, you won't see them through half the year, and others you'll see all the time, like the Big Dipper and Little Dipper. Okay, once you find the Big Dipper, and you take the two pointer stars and you go to the North Star Polaris, that's the end of the Little Dipper. Another nice constellation to look for in the northern sky is Draco the Dragon. Draco's tail curves right around the scoop of the Little Dipper, up to Draco's head and feet here. Draco is not it's a large constellation, but it's not very bright. You can see Draco best from May to November. There's another star, or another constellation up here, shaped like an M or W. Does anybody see the one that's kind of like an M or W? It's made out of 5 stars. Yeah, does anybody know what that's called? We're looking at this one right here. That is Cassiopeia. Okay, and this one shaped like a house is Cepheus. And there's a story about King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia was a beautiful woman who was fond of boasting about her beauty. The maidens who attended King Neptune in his underwater kingdom learned that she boasted she was more beautiful than any of them. They demanded that Neptune punish her. Neptune sent a sea monster to terrify the people of the coast of the country, ruled by King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia. The king asked an oracle how he could save his kingdom from the sea monster, and the oracle told him that he had to sacrifice his daughter Andromeda to the serpent. This would appease the maidens, and they would feel avenged for the way Cassiopeia had insulted them. Then they would have Neptune recall the serpent. Well, Cassiopeia was placed in the heavens to be punished rather than honored. She swings every half night around the North Star. She's upside down in a chair in which she is seated hanging on for dear life in a position most humiliating for a queen who is so proud of her beauty. So that is Queen Cassiopeia and King Cepheus. Does anybody know Orion, the great hunter Orion? Yep. Do we see Orion anywhere? Let's see. We only see Orion half of the year, so let's see if it's the right time of year right now. How do you recognize Orion? What's the best way to recognize Orion?
By his belt.
By his belt, yep. The 3 stars that make up Orion's belt are an asterism. See Orion's starting to come up on the horizon over here. So we'll wait till he gets higher up in the sky. But while he moves up higher in the sky, I'll tell you a story about Orion. The Iroquois Indians tell a story of Orion that explains why it gets cold in the winter and why the sun is higher in the summer than in the winter. The sun's light is carried in a large bundle on the back of a very old man. When winter comes, his bones begin to ache, so he gives the job of carrying the bundle to his son. His son, like most young people, tries to do his chores in the quickest, shortest way possible. So the young man carries the sun's light across a much lower path during the winter. That is why there's not enough light to warm the day. When spring comes, the old man takes the sun again on the high mountain path and again warms the earth. You can see Orion in the winter sky because that's when he's busy carrying the sun. Or you cannot see Orion. Wait a second. You can see Orion in the winter sky because he is not busy carrying the sun. Right, he's taking his time off. He's up there in the sky. Okay, so Orion is now over here. If you see the arrow pointing. So you see 3 stars that make up Orion's belt. There's another, if you know the star that is Orion's right shoulder, it's called Betelgeuse. His left shoulder, that star is called Bellatrix. He has a sword here hanging off of his belt. The 3 stars of the belt can point down to the brightest star in the sky. It's down here, it's called Sirius. That's the dog star, or Canis Major. It's going down below the horizon now. One of those stars on Orion, let's see. The middle star in Orion's belt is a little fuzzy. If you look at it up in the sky, because it's not actually a star, it's a nebula. It's like a cloud of cosmic dust. Alright, one more thing I'm going to point out in the constellations here is the great square of Pegasus. You see 4 stars over here that make up a square, like a baseball diamond almost. That's called the Great Square. And when you look in the middle of that Great Square, you can see lots of little stars around and here and there, but that Great Square looks almost empty. So they say that Great Square is like a window looking out of the Milky Way. So this is Pegasus here, and there's the Great Square of Pegasus. So those are the constellations and stories I wanted to tell you about. We can let this spin around for a little bit more, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the projector to show just the regular night sky, and we'll see if we can pick out the constellations in the regular night sky. When you go out in your at night here, do you see lots of stars or just a few?
A lot.
A lot?
Couple.
This is some.
Not too much because of light pollution.
Exactly. We have a lot of light pollution around here, so it's hard to see a lot of good stars right around here. But if you go up to the Poconos, you can see a lot more. If you go out west to somewhere like Utah or whatever, you can see a whole lot of stars. Does anybody have questions about some of the things I was just talking about?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I have a question. Go ahead.
What's that one? The one that looks like a frog? That
The
constellation?
one that looks like a frog.
Right behind your head right there.
I don't know all of them. I only know my stories that I have, but we can look that up here. This one right here, huh?
Yep.
That looks like a frog, right? What we'll do when we get out, I'll look that up for you, okay? Because I don't know that one.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we learned about.
Mr. Tom.
Yes, sir.
Does
sorry?
this show the triangle that tells farmers when it's time to stop growing crops and get growing crops?
The triangle.
Or
I don't.
square or something. There's a shape that in the sky no, it's like a big triangle or big square that farmers look for. That farmers look for. It tells them like when to begin and when to end growing crops.
That looks like a triangle up there.
Yeah. So right now we're looking at the winter sky still, because Orion's still up there. And I would imagine the one Seamus is talking about is comes in the spring.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. The Great Square Pegasus. Yeah. The Great Square Pegasus there is coming up. Yeah. Could be. Okay. So we'll look that one up too. There's so many constellations and so many stories, and if you change between what the Greeks made the stars into, or the Romans, or the all the different Native Americans, there's so many different variations of what they call it. So I'm going to change this canister now. It's hard to do that in the dark.
Next to Ryan. Which is next to Snap. It was next.